you get a hint, a taste of the inequality of a lack of stable high-speed internet access can contribute to.
This is the Go Maluku podcast.
I know there's some of my indigenous relatives and relations that have either have lousy indigenous internet connection, or when they do have Wi-Fi, it costs them a lot of just a Zoom call like this one for like 30 minutes or for 1 hour would take almost 2 to 3 gigabytes of data. So they would have to purchase a data plan. So I'm considered like I have internet connection and everything else, so that's compared to my colleagues, it's a blessing, I would say.
Okay, did you ever had any problems like to have connection or to connect to some discussion or things like that?
Pardon me?
Have you ever had some troubles to connect with people for discussion? Or?
Oh yeah, a lot of times. So there are two difficulties with this whole pandemic with the virtual thing. Is one is time zone. So you have to deal with people that are usually when you go to, for example, performance right now going on. We're all in New York or we're all in Geneva, which is fine. But now everyone is within their own bubble, and to be able to talk to my colleagues in Australia or in Hawaii or all across the world, you have to take care of time zones, and which is even more difficult if you have a conference call with Indigenous peoples from all around the world. So you have to find out that sweet spot that is not as problematic for everyone. So you have to try to find it. And I think 2 p.m. Geneva time or 10 p.m. Geneva time it's a little bit either the sweet spot. It's not too bad for everyone, but it's not too good for either one for everyone either. So that's the problem that the pandemic brings with them, and then obviously the connection issues. Is what makes it very difficult to have a discussion, and also like when you meet face to face, you see like entire body language, and it feels still unnatural, even though I'm looking at you right now. I'm still looking at a TV screen or a computer screen, and pretty much we all have an intimate relationship with a webcam by now, which is not very helpful for working with colleagues or relationships in general. Not intimate relationships, but any relationships with colleagues, with friends, with people that you work with, to really have that connection. So those are the two, like, the big struggles that I see that we're all facing. And then what else? I think that's it, actually, the two biggest things. I don't know, what do you think? What have you heard? What do you think?
Oh, it's the same. And also I realized, like, for example, I am following the discussion at the permanent forum, and like usually I guess they need to do like one people from representative from state, one from organization, and sometimes I want to like respect that, but as it doesn't work for everybody, sometimes I have to do like 2 representatives from Indigenous or 2 representatives from states. And one time it was like maybe 3 representatives from states and no representative from Indigenous organizations. So you kind of lose some sense doing that, I guess. But
yeah. That I can. So you do you chair meetings, or do you side events?
No, like I'm taking notes during the whole session for the TOSIP, but I'm trying to take like to observe to the side event and also your podcast. So if you want to tell me some words about your podcast too, that would be a good thing. And
Sure, yeah.
why you had this idea and how you did that and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, right now? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want. Like whenever you want.
Yeah, no, like I think the podcast came out of a frustration first. It was yeah, where should I start? I thought I believe that to a lot of indigenous peoples, if you consider that there are like almost 500 million indigenous peoples all around the world, all right, 476 million according to ILO right now. There's only not even 1%, like maybe 0.1% of them is aware of what's going on at the United Nations, how it affects them. And I don't think that the United Nations should be a gray area for indigenous peoples. I think indigenous people should be aware of what's going on and should be have the capabilities and the capacities and the knowledge to participate in decision making, because that's part of our right to self-determination. So that's partly the reason why I do this. So I'm not creating the podcast is not about creating awesome interviews or whatever. The main purpose of the podcast is to document my thoughts, my work, speeches, remarks, everything, so that people have an insight in what's going on at the United Nations. And like in those conversations, you hear like small bits and pieces, maybe of like, oh, this can be helpful, that can be helpful, which is I think that is something that can contribute to helping to indigenous peoples. I tried writing, but I'm not, well, I'm starting to get pretty good at it. But when I started the whole thing, I knew I was frustrated because it was still always the same people, indigenous peoples, and I wanted more indigenous peoples to be involved. So I thought about writing, but I don't have the when I started the podcast, I didn't have the patience to write stuff. So I thought, you know what, and also I was super uncomfortable in front of a camera. So that's the only thing that I realized or thought about was, yeah, you know what, I'll just do podcast. I have a face for radio anyway, so I'll just record whatever I think and just put it out on that platform for everyone to see and to listen. And basically I'm learning in public. That's what I'm doing, so people can track whatever I'm doing, and basically everything goes on it, everything that I say out loud, apart from like high level negotiations. I'm not going to include that, but other than that that's one reason. And the other reason is my mom, she went to the UN when she was 17, so it's when she was really young. That was in the 70s. She passed away a couple of years ago, but she because of her I went to the United Nations. But I would love to have a glimpse or a video clip of her entering the UN for the very first time, or a photo or whatever. You didn't have that back then. Now you can. So it is also a little bit about building legacy. So it's also about so that my great grandchildren can see like what I did and learn from the mistakes that I made, and also stand on the shoulders of not only myself but also the people that I work with, people that I look up to. Yeah.
And do you feel more comfortable like when you have a screen than when you have to speak in front of all these people?
The funny thing is, I have no problem speaking in front of people. No problem.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't matter how big the crowd is. I have no problem to do that. My only insecurity is cameras, because I have no interaction. I cannot. like if I stand in front of a crowd or a group of people, the first thing that I want to do is how to be of value to them. So I react, I respond to people when they laugh, when I see their faces turn like I don't know, then I can adapt and respond to that. With a camera, I can't do that. Like there's I have to like just figure out what I think is helpful. So, and for a while also, it also felt very permanent in front of being standing in front of a camera. A crowd can forget you when you say something stupid. A camera doesn't, like it's recorded. So for a while, for a very long time actually, I felt very insecure in front of a camera, and maybe good thing because of the pandemic too, that I start to embrace. You know what? Everyone is it's not comfortable in front of a camera. Everyone is also not natural to talking to a webcam. So we're all in this together, you know. So I was like, you know what? I'll just throw it in there. I'll just try it out and see what happens. And yeah, slightly I'm starting to getting the hang of it, but like I still look at you instead of look at the camera. So I think I'm looking at you, but you're not, you know. So those things, you know, it's weird. So so I'm growing to feel more comfortable in a camera, in front of a camera.
I understand. Okay. So are you part of any, of which indigenous organization are you part?
So several of them. First of all, I represent my traditional council. So I'm from the Maluku Islands, which is between Australia and the Philippines, and we have a council of indigenous elders and chiefs, and I advise them on international relations, indigenous rights, basically being their foreign affairs person. So that's for my indigenous peoples, but I also work a lot with the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, which is under the UNFCCC. People from the likes of Hindu Umaro Ibrahim and so many other people. Yeah, and then International Indian Treaty Council, which is from yeah, pretty much almost everyone knows them. So I work a lot with them as well. So for them, so they credential me to go into the negotiations for the Ocean Treaty. So yeah, they all give me basically they all give me a badge, or they validate me in a way like, yeah, you can go into that meeting on our behalf. And which so yeah, that and the Pacific Indigenous Knowledge Center, which is based out of New Zealand. And so I do a lot of work for them as well. And then the special rapporteur obviously is, I also help him yeah, with his communications.
Okay, that's a lot. And how has COVID-19 affected your role as a representative of Indigenous?
Significantly. On so many ways. First of all, I like to do the work, and it's just a personal thing. I like to travel, but not like that, like, oh, let me see, go on an airplane, all that, not that. But I like to go to these meetings and really roll up my sleeves, spit in my hands, and do the work. And that is an aspect of the work that you cannot do at this point. You just sit in front of a computer, and yeah, basically this becomes your office. And whereas the yeah, the meetings where you, if it's in Geneva or New York, that was your office. So that is the physical reality. But also what is most important is the how it impacted the yeah, the movement itself, the international Indigenous Peoples movement, before we before a meeting, we met, we talked a lot, consolidated positions. We talked about um, future plans and everything else, and we still do in a way, but it's different. It feels very different. What I sense from Indigenous peoples is that we try to copy paste the physical in-person meetings into a digital landscape, and I think that is a mistake. I think because it's not working. So we have to adapt in a different way, by embracing a little bit more the virtual space, because I don't think that it's going away. Virtual is will stay for 100%, and it gives us an opportunity to yeah, to consolidate. For example, I'm from the Pacific, which is 1/3 of the planet, and before we always had to gather in at the Permanent Forum or Geneva at the Emirate in Geneva to yeah to strategize. With the pandemic, with virtual, we have the opportunity to leverage it, so that we can strategize. So it is a how should I say it? A opportunity. Yeah, it's a yeah it's in disguise, I would say, if you use it right. So, but you have to really know what virtual, how it will serve you and how it will not serve you. Virtual will serve in consolidating, in making sure that we connect with one another. That is a very good platform for virtual, a very good platform for. You can use Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever. It closes the gaps. It creates these shorter linkages. That's what it's good for. What it is not good for is actual negotiations, um, treaty negotiations, resolution negotiations. That's what it's not good for. Because in all negotiations, what you need is human to human interaction. It is the ability to to step away from the room, with you and me stepping away from the room and having a brief side conversation. You can't have that in a virtual landscape. Um, you and for Indigenous peoples, one of the biggest strengths is our ability to be on the ground, um, in meetings, in summits like COP21 and all these high level meetings. And our strength was to directly engage with states, with negotiators, and to really engage with them. Um, and that is something that virtual cannot offer. Or, sorry, that's we cannot transmit through a Zoom meeting or Zoom link. That is something that we cannot do. So I hope that virtual is going. We will keep using virtual, but in terms of actual decisions that need to be made, I hope that we will stick to in person. Um, and I heard people talk about a 50-50 option, like a hybrid option. That's not going to help. Look at a let's use an example, a office, at a in a company, where you have one part of the personnel is using Zoom, and the other person's part is in an office, in the office, also using Zoom, but physically it is not helping, because it creates a little bit of inequality, and it creates a kind of friction between people, interpersonal friction. So I think I hope that what is going to happen is that it's either or, either going to stick to virtual, which I highly doubt, or when it comes to negotiations, it will go to back to in person. And yeah, I think it's, as Indigenous peoples, we need to look at how we can adapt this whole platform so that it serves us.
You mean in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully we can talk about a post-pandemic world. You hear a lot of people talking about, well, this is a new normal. This is what this is going to stay. To a certain extent, yes. However, if you look at it purely from a advocacy, diplomacy standpoint from Indigenous peoples, I like to see a post-pandemic world that is shaped like that. Because if it is going to be fully virtual negotiations, you take away the strength, the power of Indigenous peoples. We can adapt, we can try to figure out a way to use it. However, the core strength of Indigenous peoples is, you and me sitting across the table, having a cup of coffee and having a chat, and which is not necessarily Indigenous, it's human. It is, that's what it is down the line. It is what makes us human. However, these peoples have been able sophisticated for since time immemorial. So I think so I hope that MRIP is likely going to be virtual. It's very likely going to be virtual. But what I can see that's happening right now is that the UN is gearing towards opening up towards the end of the year, looking at November, December, for in-person meetings, because there's a lot of important decisions that need to be made at the global scale. So it also realizes that in-person meetings are important to tackle very important, complex issues.
That makes sense. And that leads to my second question. Do you think there is other advantages to this, like the fact that is everything online? For example, I am a master's student and I wouldn't have the opportunity to assist to this discussion if it was in New York. So like it can help people to have access to this discussion and you can gain in visibility. So yeah, what do you think of that?
Oh yeah, well, I'm so glad you said that, because you talk about visibility, and I think that is the core main advantage of virtual. It is visibility. I would say reach. The reach, you can reach more people. If, for example, if you look at the podcast, is the idea to reach people. Virtual is the can reach more people outside of the regular people that engage with the United Nations. So I think that is a super plus for this whole for virtual. One caveat though, it is, well, you've looked at the Perm Forum sessions, like the last week. You did see it is very static. Statement, no interaction. And I think that is still what is lacking. If there's an element in there that can be in a organized manner, the engagement. So you already have the reach covered. However, the engagement, the participation of Indigenous peoples, to be able to respond to one another, comment on one another. If you add that, if that element is added, I think then you can really see the benefits of the virtual landscape, the virtual as a medium towards engaging, and also the participation of Indigenous, broader participation of Indigenous peoples. The virtual right now, it has the illusion of participation, if I may, as it reaches people, but it does not necessarily give them the opportunity to respond. A simple analogy that you can compare it to with is Instagram, for example. If you want to, people want the likes, but what's more important is the comments, is the engagement. So that is what you want to see. You want the engagement instead of like the more people, the more views you get. You want the more comments on the Prima Forum, for example. So there's certainly there's an advantage of virtual in terms of participation and decision making, as well as like we talked about before, is the ability to strategize across time zones, across islands in the Pacific or across regions. Within a given context, it does need a little bit that added element though, and that would make it a lot more beneficial for everyone, the engagement element.
Yes, especially since the forum is seems to be like a place to discuss, and I think you lose a bit of discussion, so that's a problem, I think also. But yeah, and do you think, like, I also followed the discussion, the regional discussion, and I saw that in some regions, like the Arctics, it seems to be a lot easier to connect and to build more relations with internet and stuff than in other regions as Africa, where people do not have access to internet. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, 100%. The regions itself are diverse. However, within the regions, it's not the same. In the Arctic, you primarily have the Sami and the Inuit. So you have two indigenous peoples, and all living to say very politely, in developed countries. You know, you have the Scandinavia and Canada and part of the United States, which is totally different from, for example, Africa, whereas you have the Arctic has one working language, and Africa has two, English and French, which that's already is another factor. Other factor is the difference, the very significant differences in culture, and another added factor that makes it more difficult is like you talked about before, is the internet connection. You know, the access to high-speed internet. Because the more people that go onto a Zoom conference, the more data it needs to generate. You know, and people ask to be like to turn off their videos and everything else, but if you have 200 people on a Zoom, that's a lot of data. You know, and regions in itself some regions are more organized than other regions. You have if you you talked about the Arctic regional meeting. Well, the Arctic Indigenous peoples, maybe it is also because there's only two Indigenous peoples, that there's better organized. Africa is it's more complex, and that's just Africa. Then you have Latin America, and then you have the Pacific. We're dealing with three languages. We have Spanish, English, and French. So there's a huge difference between regions, and in terms of the that make that there's some regions have more factors. Actually, that is what I want to say. Some regions have more factors that influence a regional Zoom meeting, and I think that is yeah, I think that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and also, do you think it could like create a gap between like for internet connection between people from Arctic or North America and those in Africa and Asia? Because I have the feeling that they maybe, like, for organization, maybe they take part less in Asia and Africa than in Arctic at the permanent forum. So I don't know.
No, I think your assumption is quite right. that a unintentionally internet access becomes a factor of success or failure. It can be. If like you and I, we have a pretty good internet connection, and which is it's comfortable having a conversation like this. Were I to be in the middle of in a desert in Burkina Faso or in Mali, or it would be totally different, which has a adverse effect on the conversation that we're having. One of my concerns when it comes to high-speed internet access is because it's been brought up before the pandemic, actually. It was in 2019 when the climate summit had to be moved from Santiago de Chile because of the riots or against social injustice, had to be moved to Madrid. No, it had to be moved. It hasn't even been decided yet that it were to be moved to Madrid. For a while, when Chile announced that they had to withdraw their hosting the summit, everyone, the internet, the whole world exploded and said, yes, this is the moment that climate change discourse has to be moved to virtual, to cut back on carbon emissions and everything else. The problem is that not, like you said, not many indigenous peoples have access to high-speed internet access. One argument people that put forward then they all go to a space where there is high-speed internet access, which is okay if you're in Europe. But if you're in Africa or if you're in the middle of the Pacific, it's different. Then another argument is, well, what if you just put everyone in front of one webcam, which makes it a lot more efficient and a lot more easier? Then the inequality really becomes evident, because who gets to sit in front of the camera? Who gets to go first? Who gets to go second? So it is, right now, we already have a little bit of, you get a hint, a taste of the inequality of a lack of stable high-speed internet access can contribute to, let alone down the line, if we're really going to transition to fully virtual meetings, then you would first have to ensure that everyone has the same level of high-speed internet access or virtual environments like you or me. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. So do this too quickly, and you will exacerbate the changes of the differences, and which will lead to inequality, which we already have a lot of inequality. We don't need to add another layer on top of it in these difficult times that we're in right now.
And so do you think like that there is oh yeah, like what lesson can we learn from that? Like we already talked a bit about that, but what perspectives can we draw from the fact that everything is online and that people cannot always meet?
Lessons that we can learn?
Yeah, like
yeah.
For post-pandemic world, if it happens, or what could we keep, what couldn't we, what can we keep? And
that's a very good question. First thing that pops into my mind is it goes a little bit to mentality first. It is knowing that we all have been in the same situation. For the first time in the history of mankind, of humankind, we all have experienced the same circumstances. One is a little bit more severe than the other, but like we all have experienced quarantine, lockdown, isolation, and everything else. Um, we all have experienced the first, how do you call it, being uncomfortable in front of a camera. We all have, so we all have, I think the core to all this is we all have felt vulnerability all at the same time. And I think that is, if you build, vulnerability is actually something that can, is an asset, that can help one another, and that we can, if we recognize the vulnerabilities in one another, it creates a stronger basis for more inclusion and stronger solutions and everything else. So the takeaway, or something that would, some positive takeaway, first of all, is in the frame of mind, vulnerability, knowing that we've all been in the same situation. And then I would go into like the technical aspects of it. Obviously the opportunity, or no, not the opportunity, yeah, the possibility to connect. Well, you and me are connecting at this point. We could include someone from Turkey, New Zealand, and all at the same time. So it makes the world a lot smaller, a lot more accessible. That is something that we, it can garner more better understanding of that we're like that we're all in this together, that of the that we all are facing monumental problems like climate change and loss of biodiversity. I think that it is, it opens up the highway that we can all go into. And before, we were just like, oh yeah, climate change, I don't know, it only affects the small island states in the Pacific, not for me, or Greenland. But now you see that everything is so much more connected. It's so much more out in the open. Almost the entire world is moving virtually right now. And I think that you can use that for good and for bad. But using it for good is to raise awareness and wins hearts and minds through conversations, videos. People use Clubhouse right now. You see all these initiatives popping up with the core purpose of connecting. And I think that is the one of the main advantages. I think that we can all take away is that we're all human. We all have a desire to connect with one another, with people from all around the world. So I hope that stays, and I think that the technology will catch up to that, to cater more for that. But that is what I believe. Again, and it stays within like normal, like a Clubhouse, or what we're doing right now. It goes to like reach and engagement, the participation aspect. The UN is still has like long way to go. Still has a long way to go of trying to get to the point where people can actually meaningfully and directly participate in meetings.
And for you, do you think you will keep your podcast or something like that after all of this?
Yes, because I have I started the podcast before the pandemic. Luckily, I actually increased the what I uploaded to the podcast, because I had more time, because we're all grounded anyway. And it makes me also, and I think that, that's also main vantage point from the pandemic. It is it gives you the opportunity to come out stronger than you went in. Let me explain a little bit. So in the pandemic, before the pandemic, started podcast. During the pandemic, I either could just sit back, relax, and enjoy the 1 year of not doing anything, get fat and whatever. Or I could just, well, you know what, I'll just do podcast interviews, whatever, create my brand, so to say, or awareness, marketing, whatever you want to call it, and come out stronger, from out of the pandemic. Now, what is stronger in my view is more engagement and more reach. That more people see, all right, this is what's going on at the United Nations. Make it more accessible, as it's there's so many Indigenous peoples all around the world, 476 million Indigenous peoples. And I made it my very bold, audacious mission to inspire each and every one of them. So I think this whole podcast will continue in perpetuity, actually, until I either either I die, or no, that's it, actually, because for reaching 476 million Indigenous peoples, it is a big ass task, or mission, or a goal. And and I just have to keep on, as my work progresses, my thinking progresses, and I just keep on documenting whatever I think. And also with the podcast, is what I try to do is give people permission to be wrong, because we're all learning. So in many cases, I'm contradicting myself in the podcast, because today I have more information than I had a couple of days ago. So I do contradict myself. So it is also trying to give people permission to, one, to be wrong, to learn in public, but also document, because it's all also about legacy and duplicating yourself, I think, as well, is so that people, hopefully there's a young Indigenous boy or girl that wants to do something, and just by accident stumbles upon my podcast and like, hey, interesting. Does not necessarily have to go into the UN, but finds some motivation to stand up for his or her rights. That's cool for me. So it is. I think the podcast will be part of my life, like changing socks every day. I will continue doing it for a very long time. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And I don't know if you saw this picture, but on the Facebook page and maybe on the Twitter one too of the Permanent Forum, so they posted this picture of Descaye coming at the League of Nations, and then like saying that now we are online. And do you see it as a progress, or how do you see it, like seeing all this progression, all this path to today, where everything is online and we are still here, like talking on ourselves?
So let me try to understand your question correctly. So what is it? Is it a?
I just wanted to your point of view on that. Like, if you think it's more of a progress right now, or like, how do you see it, like this progress in the beginning to today, where our discussion are online?
Mm-hmm. It is. The thing is, like, it is where the world is going right now. Like, there's a lot of things that is going virtual, and what we can do is complain. That's what we can do, or we can use it to our benefit. And I subscribe to the second group, I would say, is use it to our benefit in a way that it does respect our rights, the right to self-determination. Like, the last thing that I want is that there's a virtual tour to one of the sacred spaces or spots of Indigenous peoples. I don't want that to happen. So there's a way of using this to our advantage. And I think we're all in this space right now, of which is similar, like, to the internet when it was in its early stages. People didn't know what the hell it was doing. Like, I don't know. I don't know what this is. It's this computer that does all these weird sounds. I think we're in that spot right now. And right now, what we just have to do is figure out, all right, what is ethical? What is how can we use this within ethics and not exploit it? And people have a tendency to exploit what's new for personal gain. And I think that it would be wise, not just for indigenous peoples, but for peoples in general, to look at, all right, what is ethical? What is the ethical use of the internet? There's a lot of opportunities. Some are good, some are bad, but you do have to, like, look at it, because there's so many opportunities that I think that virtual and internet brings right now that can really help indigenous peoples. That so I'm looking at interesting things like blockchain and non-fungible tokens, which can really help indigenous peoples either, for example, fundraising, which is a difficulty for indigenous peoples, and with the new thing that's coming up with non-fungible tokens, you take away funders, you take away the middleman, and indigenous peoples can create and earn money by selling it themselves. So it is, you know what I mean. So it is observing, just using the internet how we observe the planet, observe, see where it goes, and then look at it the right way and use it the ethical way. Yeah.
Great. So I think I asked all of my questions, but maybe you have something you like to add, like something that can be helpful for me, or something you want to say.
I don't know. Like, what is? Yeah. How can do anything like it can be on anything. Anything thoughts that pops into your head.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if like you want, because it's all on the like all on how it impacted a representative, and not only internet, like also on personal life, on the efficiency of work and stuff like that. So if you have any remarks on that, I would be pleased to hear. If you don't, it's okay, we can.
No, I think one of the amazing things that the pandemic shows, and people misinterpret it though. It is the aspect of the internet, of so internet in general, not just Zoom or virtual. It is that, at least it's my conclusion. It is that it exposes people, both in a good way and in a negative way. Exposes the vulnerabilities, the flaws, and the only thing that you can like you can decide whether you want to use it as a stepping stool or as a way to dwell on things. What a lot of people say about during the pandemic is that there's a lot of negativity going on. The pandemic only increased negativity, and I think that's a wrong assumption. I don't think that increased negativity. I think the internet or the pandemic exposed negativity. It gave people more and more, felt more comfortable, like, so people talking shit about one another or somebody else. It's not because I was talking to you. It's because that person was a shitty communicator all along. And I think that is something interesting. One of the interesting observations that I gather from the pandemic So you pay attention to everything. So Zoom, perm form is itself, you see, not perm form, but like, you see people acting differently in front of Zoom cameras or on the internet in general. And I think that's interesting. It is. I think it is because it is in my line of work. Not my work. Yeah, it's not my work. I just love to do it. I when you're in negotiations, when you're in diplomacy and advocacy within the UN, you pay attention to people's behaviors, which is a key driver for getting your rights within the United Nations. So you pay attention to people. So that what I do at the UN, I just also apply this at on the internet, and you just see people being exposed. And I think people need to learn to accept that it's not to not blame the internet or virtual for all the negativity. It is just people were negative all along. It gave them an opportunity to do so. And also, like, people need to. Don't you hear it sometimes? So sorry, like, this is kind of a rant right now. Don't you hear it sometimes that when there's when you hear people talking and I say, yeah, well, people say or they say this on the internet, you know,
on radio. Also.
Yeah, you know, and which is so funny because actually it is not the internet, it is the bubble that you're in. You know, it is that the algorithm that you listen to, because you've been Googling too much Grenoble or anything else. You only get, it's Google. You get what you see. You get what you search for. So people should be super aware of that as well. It's not you find what you're looking for. So if you're anti-COVID, for example, you will only find anti-COVID people on the internet, and you'll think that everyone is anti-COVID. Same thing with the other side of it. If you're pro-vaccine or whatever, you know, it's anyway. It's also it's interesting. It's interesting to see all that. I don't know if that adds at all at what you're looking into.
It's always interesting to see how people like have personal remarks about it, because like that's really like your way of feeling it, so that's really cool. And that makes me think about something else, like it's about transparency, because when you are like me, for example, when I am watching the web UN TV, like we don't know how many people are watching it, and even for webinars and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of lacking, because when you are in a room at the UN, you know how many people are there, but on the internet, you can never know that. So I'm wondering how they are doing it and how they can count people and what, because there is an impact of that. So
yeah, and I think I don't think the UN perm form can measure that either. That's why they let everyone register first. To participate, and then you have to register again to present a speech, even though you can just watch it on a YouTube stream or UN webcast. So I think they cannot measure it either. The only thing that I can measure is according to registrations, but that is not a faithful representation of people that actually. So you see what I'm getting at? It's reach versus engagement. You know, right. So and that is the thing that you still that's virtually is still not able to really measure. And in those, it's, even though it is a perm form, well, it is called a perm form, but like it still does not feel like the perm form. You know, it is still it's just a monologue of 12, 14, 15 speeches, but there's no consideration. there's no reflection on it. Usually at the Perm Forum, what you hear is like, all right, thank you so much. There's a reply, or there's a chair that responds to something. And people, I'm not saying that it's happening, but I can imagine that experts can get away right now with pre-written concluding remarks. They can get away with it now. Before, they really had to like listen, and they had to take into account things. But now, like they can get away with pre-written remarks. So there's no, no, the actual, it's not even a conference anymore. It's just a series of people talking, and with the illusion of a dialogue, even though it is not. And that is something that I would like not to see become a permanent thing. And so I really hope that this virtual Perm Forum, and I truly believe that everyone is doing their best, the Perm Forum included, the secretariat and everyone. I truly believe that they're doing their best to make the best of things. But I also truly hope that this is an anomaly, that it's just a once in a, I don't know, 100 year time thing that's happening. Next year we can go to an in-person meeting. Now, if ever there's a ideal middle of the road, so we talked about engagement and reach, right? I've been thinking about it. So I've not said this out loud before. So you're getting the I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm a important person, but you're getting the first scoop on it. If you could combine it in a way by making a Perm Forum 2 weeks, or keeping it 2 weeks. However, before the 2 weeks, you do 1 or 2 weeks of virtual dialogues on issues, and you let those virtual dialogues, so you create some kind of a bottleneck, like a filter, so like from wide to narrow. So so the first stage, for the first 2 weeks, or so for the extra 2 weeks, you reach out to people and you just gather as much information as you can, and which is good, because then you can actually talk about legitimacy and accountability as a Perm Forum, or broader legitimacy. That's what I like, broader legitimacy and accountability. What you can do after that is, then you would have like a 1 week of in-person side events. So like you normally have in Geneva or New York, and that per theme, and that people can really discuss the ideas. Because right now, everything that you hold, you have to put into those 2 to 3 minutes. And you've listened to it. Almost nobody can get their case heard in 2 minutes, or merge it into a 2-minute statement. So if you do a not virtual, but a physical side event, parallel to one another on themes. So on, for example, decolonization. So you have Indigenous peoples from all over the world say something about decolonization, and it all feeds into this big side event of, I don't know, 3 to 4, 5, 6 hours on decolonization, where Indigenous peoples are considering what all these Indigenous people say. And the outcome of that will be fed into the actual conversation or dialogue that for the final report of the Perm Forum. So you get 3 things actually. You get wide reach. 2, you get very detailed recommendations. And 3, you become efficient, as the Perm Forum then gets a report that is has been already gone through the motions of really trying to hone in into like what is the core problem that Indigenous peoples face in terms of COVID-19, climate change, decolonization, and everything else. So you get a super focused and a super focused report with a high level of legitimacy. So that could be like the sweet spot of merging virtual with physical for those that cannot make it to the print form and those that can make it to the print form. Of course, there's some nuances in there that you need to hash out, as in like, well, how do you make sure that everyone is considered? But it is it has an idea. It's the beginning of an idea. That's what I would say.
Okay, great. That's a good point.